Hello and welcome to Gadget Joe, and today we're taking a look at a full HD 27-inch curved gaming monitor that you can actually afford. In today's video we're going to take a look at the first of many products sent over to us by the brand piXL, one of the new channel partners. More details on that will come out this Sunday's video, outlining an exciting new venture for both myself and yourself and the new channel partners. So what they sent us here is a brand new model. This is the CM27GF6D. Now what that means, what that translates to, is effectively a full HD curved gaming monitor. It does display full HD at 1920 by 1080p, and it does that on a 27-inch curved HVA panel. What's more is it is also a 165Hz monitor, which means that gaming is going to look absolutely fantastic. Now I know there are higher hertz monitors out there, but obviously for the price point this is probably going to be a bit of a game changer, because it is indeed a, well, I wouldn't call it a budget brand, but it's more of an achievable brand. Budget is a bit of a harsh word to sort of slap on any product. What we have here is an affordable gaming monitor, and you can get that for less than £300. I will try and get the correct information on the price, and then obviously I will link it down in the description as to where you can get your hands on one of these monitors. What we're going to do in this video is we're going to take it out of a box, explain what you get in the box, and take a look at the assembly process of it. We'll then look at things like the build quality of the monitor, and then finally we will power it up using a PC that has also been provided by one of our channel partners, which you will see again very shortly, and we will put it to the test. We will get to see exactly how this thing performs. So before we do anything, I'm going to get this open, get it out, and then I'll see you again in a moment. So now that we've got the item out of the box, we're going to take a look at exactly what you get before we get to the screen itself. You do have the stand, which actually, considering it says on the box that it's using low weight plastic parts, it's actually a solid metal stand that has some heft to it that really does feel quite sturdy and substantial, which is very, very welcome. The stand legs, effectively, that will just simply sit into place here via a thumb screw. They are also made of, I'm guessing it's an aluminium metal, and it's nice and sturdy, quite a modern design, nice and thin and lightweight. They do have these little foam rubber pads at the bottom to keep it still once in place. So I'm going to undo this and get it all in place, and then we'll finish off looking at the rest of the box. Well, the assembly of a stand certainly shows a nice simple operation. It's completely toolless. You do have a screw here that you can operate with a Phillips screw, but it does have that little handle on it so that you can do it with your hands. You also get a user manual and warranty card, which I'll move over to here for now. And then last but not least, you get another bag with two cables in it, and they are a HDMI cable and the power cable itself. And last but not least, we have the display itself, the panel itself. It is nice and light. It does feel quite robust and sturdy. Even though it says it's using plastic materials, which it does, it still feels nice and sturdy. It's got a good weight to it. It's not heavy by any means, but that weight does give it a bit of reassurance. It does feel nice and solid. It is, as we mentioned, a curved monitor. Now this exact monitor is rated at 1500R curve. What that means is the level of curve from the display. If it's a lower number, so if you had 1000R, it'd be a more aggressive curve, and then a higher number would effectively mean a more flat monitor. It does also boast a 178 degrees viewing angle all the way around, so that means effectively a full coverage peripheral view of the display itself. So we're going to take this and we're going to mount it onto this stand now. Again, it should be quite nice and simple because it is indeed toolless, but we will find out for ourselves right now. So I'm going to have to place this down and we'll have a look. That was super simple to assemble. The format of the display is a 16:9 format. Now that does technically make it a widescreen monitor, but 16:9 is pretty much the standard of 1920 by 1080p. When it comes to powering this monitor, there's no fancy DC port or extra power brick that needed for this because everything is built within. It's just a standard AC power connector or kettle lead to plug in, and everything is ready to go. So as you can see, it is now plugged in. So in a moment I'll plug it into the computer so that we can get a display through on the display so that we can really put it through its paces. So as you can see, we've got the monitor set up, pretty much running as it should be. As you can see, the display looks nice and bright. It is rated at around 300 CDM or 300 nits if you're looking at that. So indoors, you're not going to struggle even with brighter lighting. I have turned a couple of these lights off in my studio to basically so that you can see the monitor slightly better. But 300 nits on a monitor that's going to be used indoors is plenty enough. It's plenty bright enough. It also features a 4000:1 contrast ratio. It is going to be slightly difficult to see all this on a camera because when you've got it running on a camera, it's always going to look slightly different to what you see in real life. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run a couple of tests on the monitor to get an idea of exactly how it's running. So the first one is using device tests, and obviously as you can see, everything's running across through here. These ones are running at 41 to 82 frames per second, but this one is at 164 to 165 frames per second. Now if the camera should be able to pick it up, you'll see that the image is nice and sharp. That's because it is indeed a 165 Hz display. So what we're going to do to check that is by going onto a refresh rate test, and as you can see, it is 165 Hz. Now if I'm going to use something that I've used before, and that is ISO or EIZO, whichever one you want to call it, this one does a few different tests to basically give your monitor a quick benchmark and really see where you're going from. Let's get it started and press start test. So this test out, I know people that are watching this are probably going to be familiar with what a lot of these are, but I'll give a quick idea of what it is. This is the test pattern. All it shows here is multiple shapes, circles, colours, and lines in closer vicinity to each other so that it can see if you can differentiate between the lines. This allows you to really get a gauge of how sharp the image is. The circles should not be pixelated in any way, and as you can see, they look fantastic. The RGB colours and the CMY, they are very nice and vibrant. You can tell what colour they are. So you've got your red, your green, your blue, you've got your cyan, you've got your magenta, I don't know what colour it is. It's purple to me, and then you've got your yellow, and you can basically see an idea of what the colours look like, and you've got a different scale here to show you the colours as they start to fade out. The circle, as I mentioned before, is nice and sharp, as are the lines going across. There's no warping anywhere. All the lines are nice, true and sharp and straight, and the black and white cubes around this side are nice and clear. One thing you do get from some of the curved monitors that I've reviewed recently, or I've looked at recently, is what you call colour warping or image distortion. And you'll find that in the corners of the displays, the images start to warp out a little bit. And there's none of this on this monitor. It seems to work really well. Even these lines that you can see here, you might struggle to see them on the camera, but they are super clear. Next, we've got a series of different coloured backgrounds. This is to show for any defective pixels. So starting off with black, you can see on here there is not a single defective pixel, which is to be expected on a newer monitor. That's not to say that all monitors are going to be 100% perfect 100% of the time. You may find that you get the odd dead pixel. If that's something that's an issue with you, all you need to do is contact the company, and I'm pretty sure they're more than likely just going to be happy enough to swap it out. We'll look for different ones. So you've got white, again, same sort of test to see if there's any colours come up. You've got red, green and blue. Again, on all of them, it looks absolutely fantastic. The colour is really vibrant. It's something that I'm noticing from this display. Considering it is classed as a budget line, again, that's that word again, budget. It's an affordable monitor. There's obviously going to be some really high-end monitors that are 1080p and that are curved and that are very similar size. And this, I would probably say, is one of the top performing ones that I've had my hands on. So Uniformity. This one is pretty much exactly as it says. All we're looking for here is, it's a grayed out screen, and we're looking for all different corners of the screen, all over the screen, to see if that colour remains true all the way around. And as you can see, from my perspective, and hopefully the camera shows this, it looks fantastic. You can adjust the grey tone so it's slightly darker, so you can get a better idea of that uniformity, and overall it's performing really well. Next we're going to look at colour distances. This one is slightly different. This is basically for uniformity of colour and colour separation and distances with different colours. So for example, as you can see here, the background and the rectangle are slightly different colours on the spectrum. If we was to change them to be slightly similar, which isn't the easiest thing to do, it's really quite difficult to get it right, but you can get an idea of me trying to adjust it similar, and as you can see, the screen looks very similar. So this is good for if you've got multiple monitors. You can then get a direct visual comparison of them both, and you can also help to get it right so that your colour balance is the same across both monitors. Next we are looking at the gradients of the monitors, and that is pretty much exactly what it says it is. As you can see, it's nice, smooth, clear gradient from black to white, and you can't really see any of the edges of those steps. Now how this works is, it is gradient done in the form of 256 individual lines or steps, as this program calls it, and they are from top to bottom all across the image, and it blends in beautifully. This monitor actually is really surprising me. It's really nice and sharp, and considering it's a 1080p monitor, it's really performing very well. If you go down, you can see those individual steps on, this is obviously 8 steps rather than 256, but you can see the sharp differentiation between each step. So this is still the same white to black image behind it, and you can really get an idea. Even, I'd probably say even at 128 steps, you can see it marginally, some slight edging, but it just performs really well. 256 steps seems to be the sweet spot. Here we get sharpness, and this is pretty self-explanatory, because all this is loads of text on the screen all around from top left to the top, bottom right. It is lots of text. It's just the same sentence over and over and over again. And this test is basically to see how well you can read the text. And based on a font size of 12 currently with black text on a white background, I can read that perfectly fine. Let's try and do it smaller. So the smaller text, I can still read that really well. And as you can see, a lot bigger text, it's still nice and clear. You can see every edge of every bit of text. Let's try it with white and black. And again, this actually I can see it better doing this. This is obviously why a lot of dark themes are very popular right now. Not only does it help with battery power for things like phones and laptops and stuff like that, because it doesn't need as much light behind it, it just is a little bit easier on the eye to see. So let's try this down to 10. Now this I can still read very, very well. It is slightly more difficult to read the white on black than it is the black on white. Well, that just might be my eyes, but the text in general is nice and clear. Right, the viewing angle is something that's going to really struggle to pick up on a camera, because the viewing angle is basically, it's a test to see with all these 5 dots, these 5 circles on the screen. I can look at different angles, so I can look left, right, up, down, all sorts of different angles. And those circles are staying pretty much the same either way round, and that's that 178 degree field of view that I mentioned earlier on in the video. And it is really quite fantastic, because one thing I do notice is that the contrast of the image is staying the same all the way. Now what helps that with this panel is the fact that it's an LED backlit panel. So the LED backlit panel, it is lit very fairly all across the screen. So it just looks absolutely fantastic. Right, this is the gamma testing. This is something that is once again going to be hard to see on the camera. This is basically loads of really faint, tiny lines across the screen, going right from the top to the bottom. And then you've got a logo here. So you've got the EIZO or ISO, whatever you want to call it, logo in the middle. You then adjust your gamma level on the bottom with this bar here. And as you can see, it slightly changes the color of this logo. And that's changing the gamma value of the logo. So what we're looking for here is to see when the logo blends in best with the background. So it doesn't have to blend in perfectly, because it never will, because obviously it's a solid object compared to the many lines behind it. But from my visual point of view, I would say the gamma level is between maybe 2.2 to 2.4, which is pretty much spot on for the sRGB line, as you can see here. On the camera, it actually looks slightly more blown out on this one. And if I bring it down, I'd probably say on the camera, it looks better to the gamma level of 2. But in visually looking at it right now, without a camera, I would probably say it sits between 2.2 and 2.4, which is absolutely perfect. Right, this one is to get an idea of the response time. It doesn't give you the direct response time as such, because this monitor is rated at 6 milliseconds of response time. Now, I know that's not amazingly fast compared to a lot of gaming monitors, and this is marketed as a gaming monitor, but the fact that it's 165 Hz is what sells this monitor, and 6 milliseconds is still more than enough for most common gaming if you're going to play things like Fortnite or the new Pal World that's taken over the world. And most games basically will be perfectly fine. What we're trying to do is get those two rectangles as close together as possible whilst going a faster speed as possible. So as I start to increase the speed in a moment, it's going to produce some edging or some blur of the shape looking like it's dragging across the screen. I'm going to try and get it to a speed where I can comfortably still monitor and watch these rectangles clearly. So obviously when it goes too fast, they're going to go fast, really fast, and I'm going to struggle to catch up with them. So I'm going to get it to a speed where they go across nice and smoothly. And obviously that 165 Hz display is going to really make a difference here, because it's going to make it a little bit easier to watch. What happens then is, as it's going across and I can still see it comfortably, those edges that are going to be coming off the white one will hit a certain point. So for example, if this went across another 2 or 3 centimeters, I've then got to try and close the gap between these two rectangles to get this blue one to basically be at the end of this edging of the white one. So if it's closer, then it's obviously going to be a slightly better score. So as we know, this is a 6 millisecond response time monitor. Doesn't mean it's going to be 6 milliseconds all the time. Obviously that's what it's rated at. So I'm going to start increasing the speed. Again, the camera is going to struggle to pick up this properly. So I'm going to do this by eye. So at the moment I can still see that really well. Some people do this test and they report jumping of the blocks, and that's because the displays have a slower refresh rate. And this one seems to work really well. I can still see those rectangles really quite clearly, and at the moment I'm going to go for that. So at the moment it's at 2910 pixels per second, so that's pretty quick, and it's going across. So I don't know if the camera's going to pick that up, but as you can see on this white one, it's got that shadow in, that edging on the thing. So I'm just going to adjust the distance between them, so it's around 120 pixels. So it is on the higher end of the distance when it comes to this speed. Obviously if I reduce the speed, it's going to be slightly different. When I'm going slower, that edging I can then decrease quite a bit. But generally speaking, this is a good representative of some gameplay. If you're playing a game that's really high intensity and you're looking for something that's going to be moving around a lot, like a driving game or CSGO where it's close combat, distance between those objects to be as little as possible. And the sweet spot on this does tend to be around the 100 to 120 pixels mark, which would pretty much put it in line with the 6 millisecond response time that we saw earlier. Equally very impressive because of that high refresh rate. You can see it a lot clearer. So the 6 millisecond time is not obviously one of the best on the market, but it sort of combats it with that 165 Hz refresh rate. So it's still a very, very capable monitor. in most games, you're going to really utilize that high refresh rate, and then the 6 millisecond response time isn't going to be too much of an issue. So as you can see, the tests are quite conclusive. The display is really quite nice. Again, it is a gaming display and it will perform very well in most games. Let me just do some tests of, for example, YouTube. What we have on the display here is a 1080p video on YouTube. Obviously, YouTube does tend to compress the quality slightly, so you're not going to get the full potential, but as you can see, it looks nice and sharp. This is just a generic landscape video that has been recorded by someone and uploaded to YouTube. This is playing through 1080p. I know YouTube is a slightly difficult test because they've got your 1080p and 1080p premium with a higher bitrate, because that's how they seem to work for some reason, but the image is nice and sharp. The colours are nice and vibrant, and as you can see all of those details. You've got the deep blues from the sky, the light blues of the river going across the middle in here. The greens are nice and bold. Overall, it performs really well, and as I've mentioned a few times in this video, this is really quite impressive. That curved display actually really does do a good job. I mean, when you're looking straight at it, it just looks like a standard monitor, but when you start to look around it, you can see the curve, and it does do a great job of really drawing you into this monitor, and those small bezels around the outside are obviously very welcome. So if you had two of these, you could mount them next to each other and they would look fantastic, because those small bezels really do make a difference. Overall, I'm really impressed with the display in general. So the wallpaper on the Windows 11 screen is a fantastic idea of how sharp and colourful and how vibrant the display is. This is using HDR on the monitor. Obviously you can go through your settings on the display and you simply flick through them. So at the moment it's got FreeSync on, you've got 165 Hz of frequency, you can adjust the brightness and contrast, the colour temperature. Obviously you've got the situation here, so you've got display size. Currently it is set at 16:9 to basically cover the whole thing. Input source, and you can obviously switch your overdrive and FreeSync and HDR modes. So as you can see, the image is nice and vibrant, and the colours really stand out, they really pop. You can see all the details, like even down to all the people that are walking across here. You can still see the signs. And I think if you really sort of zoomed in on them, you could actually make out some of the details. The colours do look quite saturated in the same of oversaturated, but that's more of a HDR effect that's making a difference. In fact, I'm going to show you that now by turning the HDR off. You'll probably find that the colours all of a sudden look slightly washed out, and that is just the nature of HDR. So if I turn that, there you go, so you can see the difference. They look slightly more washed out. I mean, they're still very visually nice. Obviously, you've got the greens, you've got the yellows of the cliffside, and the blues of the sky. But when you turn that when you turn that HDR on, it looks absolutely fantastic. So if I can do this without pulling the cables out, on the back, we can see the way it looks. And as I mentioned earlier, it is a gaming computer. It just needs a little bit of a wipe down from when I've had it out of the box. It's got a few fingerprints on it. But as you can see, it does have that aggressive gaming aesthetic. You've got the red accents here, and obviously that red LED ring going round the back. The stand is nice and compact. It's really quite solid. When it's all in place, it's not going anywhere, and I'm really sort of wobbling it. The display holds itself nice and steady. Obviously it's Razer mounted, so you can take this off by simply pushing this button, and the stand does detach, and then you can mount it to the wall using your Razer mount, or alternatively, if you've got a triple or double monitor setup, you can hook it to a monitor arm. You do have this etching on the sides of the LED ring here that further enhance that gaming aesthetic. So that pretty much brings us to the end of the video on the piXL CM27GF6D monitor. Now, it is a perfectly capable gaming monitor. Now, I did have my reservations because on the website it does state that it uses lightweight plastics and it obviously has that 6 millisecond response time. My initial response was it's going to feel quite plasticky, quite cheap, quite light, and not really as much of a gaming monitor, but more just a cheap monitor. and I was pretty much proved wrong right out of a box. I'll get to the 6 millisecond response time very shortly, but considering it says that it uses those lightweight plastics, it feels nice and sturdy. It feels really super strong. The stand I'm really impressed with, how easy it was to get everything built, even with someone with sausage fingers like mine. Got it straight out of the box, just put it straight in, plug it in, and it's working. And the settings straight out of the box, the colour profiles and the extra additional features such as the HDR mode, which really makes the colours pop. It's just pretty impressive overall. If you're looking for a monitor that is something that you can use for those high-end games, or you're a competitive gamer and you're looking to play things like combat games like CSGO, then this is probably not really the monitor that you're going to look for. Yes, the 165Hz refresh rate is phenomenal, it's fantastic, especially for the price point, but that 6 milliseconds response time is really going to hamper you when it comes to things like that. But what would that make it for? That makes it for pretty much everybody else. So if you're a casual gamer or you just like to play your games, you like to chill, or you're wanting to get a nice curved monitor for your children because you just bought them a new gaming setup, or you want to treat yourself, or you do things like myself, like video editing, rendering and image photo, you're a photographer, anything like that. Basically, I'm just listing off loads of different scenarios. For anything else other than maybe competitive gaming, then this is a no-brainer. For the price point, it is pence compared to some of the competitors on the market. The fact that you have that phenomenal display, that 1080p display. Yes, you can get some higher resolution displays in terms of 1440 or 4K, but for a 1080p display, this is pretty much up there with some of its competitors. You've got that nice natural curve to the display. It does feature a 1500R curve, which I mentioned earlier on in the video. It's not aggressively curved, so that it's really focused on you. It does immerse you into the display quite well. What I do like about the fact is that it's not an ultra-wide screen. I currently use an ultra-wide monitor and it's fantastic, it looks amazing, but I'm probably going to use this and then get my hands on another one, because I think two of these side by side would be perfect for something that I would need in terms of video production. It's just a fantastic monitor. It's easy to use. It's got that gaming aesthetic, so it's going to fit in any setup. What's more is all the gaming aesthetics, effectively the LED lights and the aggressive styling, is all on the back. So if you want to have it set up in a nice modern setup and you're a slightly older person, you're not going to see all of that, and it will still fit in just as well there. It's just really surprised me how well this thing performs. The colour corrections, the colour distributions, the fact that it's very evenly backlit. There's no issues when we was testing it. Obviously that high refresh rate is key in a monitor like this, especially for doing gaming. It's just overall a really nice monitor. I think the only thing I would personally change on this, and even then it's not a criticism, it's just something I'd like to see on something like this, is maybe a USB pass-through, so that you can then add a USB something or other to the monitor. And that's only because I do utilise a lot of USBs. It's not necessarily needed. You do have those two HDMI ports for display ports and an audio pass-through, so that you can then connect it up to some speakers or headphones and it can play through that. And that's pretty much it. It's a fantastic display. Really, really impressed. Actually, I've not noticed this until I've become to the end of this video, is that viewing angle. And now I've mentioned it a few times in the video, but the viewing angle is fantastic. And when I did that test, obviously I couldn't make the images do any different to what they were looking straight on. And I'm looking right on the side of it now, and I can still see the image perfectly. It's still well lit. There's no colour changes. There's no distortions. It's just a fantastic panel. Really, really impressed. And it's definitely something that if you're going to get your hands on it, you're not going to be disappointed. So if you're looking to get one, again, I will leave a link in the description down below where to get one. And that's pretty much it. And while I'm here, you'll have noticed that the computer I've been using to power this is missing something. I've been doing all the tests and everything like that, it's missing a graphics card, because this is the Logic's computer. This is another one of the channel's partners that I will discuss in more detail. And this computer is indeed a pre-built using the new AMD 8600G. And this is a video that you're going to see very shortly. I'm going to do a review on this, I'm going to play some games on it, and I will be using this monitor to really put it to the test and see what it's like to use a computer without a graphics card with inbuilt graphics. Even things down to the keyboard and mouse. That's another one of the channel partners. More videos that you're going to see very soon. And I'm even going to be focusing on some giveaways. More details about all these channel partners will be on this Sunday's video. So don't forget to click subscribe, because there's lots more to come from the channel. And obviously reviews like this, reviews for things like this, and plenty of giveaways. So don't forget to click subscribe so you don't miss out on anything. Once you're down there, hit like on the video. Let me know what you think of this 27-inch 1080p curved gaming monitor. And that's pretty much it. I've been Gadget Joe. This has been the piXL CM27GF6D 1080p curved 27-inch monitor. And until next one, goodbye.